this friend of mine, he went to Antarctica and he brought me back some rocks from Antarctica, which we're not supposed to do, but I was like super excited that he did it because like I love my rocks and everything. And I was like, okay, cool. And so I asked for the rocks and then he actually brought them back for me. So then he was like, well, he was asking me if I could like dream about Antarctica. And, you know, and I'm like, I don't really work that way, but okay, like I'll try. And so I decided to take the rocks that he gave me and physically like have them next to my pillow, like hold them as long as I could when I was sleeping. So I was like sleeping with these 3 Antarctica rocks. They were from three different ports and stuff in Antarctica. Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, I slept with these Antarctica rocks for like a week and I didn't get anything. And then like on like the last day of the week, I got this. It was weird because like sometimes when you have special dreams, they're not like regular dreams. Like it's like more like watching a YouTube video, or it's like something that explains something to you. So I got an overview on this concept that the earth is a realm, like we're a bubble. And we are in, it's like a 3-dimensional or 4-dimensional flower of life. Like, you know how Olympic rings, like they go into each other or whatever. And this is like a 3D model of a, you know, like a 3D bubbled Rubik's Cube. Okay. That's like reality, right? And we're one of the circles, and that's Earth is one of the circles. And it's also like how if you look at sea foam, you look at a wave and you look at it microscopically, there's all these little tiny bubbles in there, but they're still going in the flow of the wave, right? Mm-hmm. Well, so our bubbles aren't ever popped, but sometimes they interlace with other bubbles, other realms. And because time is slower and moves differently on the macro of this, it looked to me that like right now, the bubble that is touching us the most is the realm that is interconnecting in Antarctica. And Antarctica, the ice, the uninhabitability, the way that is all, it's a glamour, meaning it's like a facade. It is it's psychologically, physically, and like spiritually, it is put there as that realm has protected itself from us, and it doesn't want us to go there. It doesn't want us to explore there, but that is the only place that realm can touch our realm as well. And I think like in my dream, it was like, so, you know, I don't know, let me like get a little pin here. I'm about to say, okay, so I have experienced like I don't know if I call them watchers. I don't really know what they are, but like I would experience like these, especially in my 20s. Like it was really strong up until maybe 31 or something. From the time I was like early 20s to 31, it would be there was a lot of beings that I would feel watched a lot, like whether it would be orbs or like dark shadows, or I just felt like there was always, I was never alone, and it felt adversarial, and it felt like it was very it weighed on me quite a bit, especially at night. When I was alone at night is when it would mainly start, you know, being a thing. And I eventually like I realized as I got in my 30s, actually they're feeding off of my fear. And like I felt like my fear of them brought them in. And I had to like basically like I had to just like balls up basically and be like, hey, listen, like, you know what? I don't care if you're an angel or a demon. I don't care if you're this or that. Like the thing we have in common is we're both in existence right now. And I don't want you in my fucking room right now. So go away. And I would be like, I don't consent to your, like, you don't believe. And then there's also like, just, they don't, this is so stupid, but it really works. Whenever I find one in a hotel room or something, because I'm a flight attendant, they go there and like, I just like, will have like a sense of some being watched and other stuff like that. Like I like clap as loud as I possibly can. And then like, I don't know if they don't like the sudden noises or whether there's something about like, you can clear a space, you can clear your room with like clapping, make sure you clap directly at every corner in the room. I do think corners trap them, and I don't think we're meant to be in square boxes, and that is actually really, it would be great if you could live in a dome, or you could live in like some sort of situation without like the 4 points are the triangle corner, like, you know, sharp 90-degree things.
Yeah, some sort of fixed box.
Yeah, some fixed points. Like I actually, we're all in these, but this is not how we're supposed to be. It's not organic. It's not good for our energy flow. And it allows it's like we're putting ourselves in a cage to be watched. And I know that that's so, like, the way you have to do it is like you have to, like, you literally have to blow it out, like energetically, like from your heart, you blow them out. And it sounds like it wouldn't work, but I finally just would be like, I'm not scared of you. Like you can't have me, you can't do anything with me, you can't whatever. But like, if you're not going to talk to me for real, like, or have a real conversation, if you want to access me and you want to have a real conversation with me, meet me in the daylight, in a way which we could talk. But this whole like lurking and looking at me in the middle of the night thing, it doesn't work for me. And then I like got to a point where I got so good at lucid dreaming that, like, anytime I was going to have a nightmare or anything, like, or just like my big lucid dreaming hack, I was born like a lucid dreamer. I didn't really know it was a thing, but I touch my fingers all the time. Like all the time. I'm always like doing this, like when I'm talking, I'm aware of my tactility mostly 24/7 while I'm awake. And so as soon as you realize that you don't have tactility, it doesn't feel the same in the dream, you can wake within your dream. That's my biggest hack. Plus I drink a lot of water before I go to bed, so I have to pee all the time. And anyway, like, you can just change the channel. If you don't like it, you can change the channel. And like, that is like, just don't tell yourself, no, I can't. I'm telling you, I'm another human being who does it. So it's like, now you know that it can be done. You can do it. If you know somebody else has done it, then it's something you can do, and you just do it. And like, I feel like that with anytime there is something looking at you, watching you, something that is, it doesn't have to be defined what it is. Cause like, and I don't care whether anybody believes what I'm saying or not. It's just like, for those of you that want to like try to hack into not having anything that you don't want around you, there is maybe some sort of prime directive, like or universal law of consent and permission. And a lot of things do respect that. And like, you like, what you focus on grows, and fear attracts like things that like fear. So you really have to just like give your fear, like, breathe into it. Like, it's fine if you express fear, it's fine if it's a feeling, but you don't live there. You don't live in fear. You breathe it back into the earth, which can transmute it. Like, always breathe your fear back into the earth. Anyway, that's all I have to say about things that lurk in the night that watch you, or like, I just don't like them. And that's how I deal with it personally.
Do you believe in astrology?
No, but
I don't. Okay.
I don't. It's interesting because like I've had people on. I have some really good friends who are really talented astrologers. I just think that if astrology is right, then, well, maybe I should believe in it, because if it is right, then this is literally not what we think it is. Like, it's a construct, you know, with a program.
Yeah.
And like, if there's a way to read and react to the program and have personality traits based on the time you decided to enter as a soul, then this is just a construct. You know, what's
too much
interesting is I know that, like, I was living in New York for a while, and I had an art gallery, and I became director of this Upper East Side gallery. And before I could get hired, I was one of the grandchildren, the Rockefeller grandchildren, was one of the artists that was represented at this gallery. And before I could get hired, she had to check my sign and my chart. And at that point, I was like not into this at all. And like, I had to like get my mom to get my birth certificate to get my birth time. Like, it wasn't okay that I didn't know my birth time. Like, it was like that, like, she took it that serious. They had to like compare, they had to look at my chart and compare my chart and do all this before I could even, she wasn't even who I was working for. She just was represented by them. But I think she was such a patron of the guy who owned the gallery that if she didn't like me, I wasn't going to be able to be an employee.
Mhm.
So based on my astrology alone. So I never even met her. I just know I had to like talk to her on the phone, and I had to give her all my information and stuff. And so that like that's the thing that cued me into it. So I was probably 29 or something around that time when I did that. And I thought to myself like, huh, so I guess these like super high elites like really believe in astrology. I'll
And-
say I
Mhm.
don't think that it's hard to trust the sources in which you get the astrology, right? Like how do we know that it's not delineated from something? I mean, like, how do we know what they're telling us about these certain markings means what they say it means? So that's the thing, is like I feel like I almost would trust somebody who came up with their own observations of patterns versus what's told, because it's so much of our world is inverted, and so much of our world is basically a giant spell, like all the way down from our money to our like all of the systems in which we are in, like our media or everything. So much of it is just like this bullshit information that it's not that I don't think this is a construct, and that there's coding to it in some sort of view.
Mhm.
That's I guess that would be what you would call astrology, is like some sort of way in which to read the code. I just don't trust that they're going to give us the handbook. And I mean, the other thing is though, like, we're on a Gregorian calendar that supposedly was like by Augustus, like in the like, Roman rule. Like, so like,
Mhm.
I mean, before that, like what were the Greeks using? What was the people before? I mean, like, so sometimes I kind of wonder, like, well, like the 12-month, like the way in which
Mhm.
we count our year and everything is, I mean, even the fact that we have leap years, and the Mayans like had like instead of a 365 year, they had like a gestation of a baby, like a 280 or 260 day year, like a 9-month cycles. And
Mm.
I mean, like different cultures like, I just feel like a lot of the way in which we tell time, that we, especially now, we're down to like, we know every single second, and like it's in some kind of way it's all bullshit, like constructs that are made up, and like who decided this is day one, like why are
Mhm.
we in year 2022, and like how do we really know what year we really are even in, and
Exactly.
year from when, or I mean, it's just so that's another flaw of astrologies that I sometimes see, is like I mean, because even if you're going to say like, oh, I was born on 101, like whatever, uh you're going on,
You're going on a false model. I know what you're saying.
yeah,
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
going
yeah,
off a false model. So
yeah.
it is like, that's what so back to that other point that I'm just going to reiterate in another way.
Mhm.
It's just that, like, yes, I think there's patterns,
Mhm.
and I think that there could be destiny, and I think that there is all this stuff, but at the same time I feel like believing in it gives it power, and I'm not even 100% sure it needs to have power, because I think that it's had power for a long fucking time, and fuck it. That's kind of how I feel. Yeah, I'm sure that
I
the elite,
think,
I'm sure other
yeah.
things believe it. I'm sure that like these things are, whatever, but anything, I don't know. I
So for
just,
me, the analogy is if you, because again, so since we do have the concept of free will, so these are like, I don't know, the stars like spinning and stuff. I don't know. This is the first thing I could grab. So this is like them basically spinning around, and essentially the thing goes, if you're basically able to track them, kind of like a mathematical equation. Like I'm able to track if I throw these and it goes and it hits the wall, it's either
right.
going to bounce off and hit this edge right here, or it's going to stab it, tink, and go into the wall. But we're in a non-fixed universe. So if I know physics, so the whole thing about astrology is really just to not discard it completely, but to try to get the most accurate assessment as I throw this, as you fix
Okay.
it, so then you know where at least I can kind of tell where the scissors are going to land, because
Right.
there is always free will, and it's literally trying to tap in to I guess, creation in some sense, and then see from like a bird's eye view in a sense. The thing I want to ask you the most is, what do you think is the most compounding evidence for the giant phenomenon? Specifically, I loved your interview in Aruba, one, and also the very interesting looking natives in, I believe it's off the coast of Papua New Guinea, where they have very distinct unusually phenotypical looking features. That's another one. Or the giant mummies in China, the giant mummies throughout the world, it seems like.
Yeah, there are a lot of everywhere.
Yeah. And then the
Let's
legends in Mexico are weird too, about giants too, how they had to fight giants, and Native Americans had to fight giants too. So I'm most interested in, I think,
It's
that
weird. It's
phenomenon.
not like there's any one single case where I could be like, this is the definitive case. And that's kind of almost the design, it feels like, because I mean, if you really start looking deeply into the giants, which I suggest, like Jim Vieira and Hugh Newman have a lot of, they have a book on, they have 2 books now, and I think they're working on a 3rd one about the giants, but they go through, like, just basically you can look at how many cases there are, the pervasiveness of it. There's, like, I have a lot, if on my YouTube channel, I have a lot of people that I've interviewed who talk about giants. And for me, it's just, you know, the whole Smithsonian cover up of it. Or, I mean, like, I've talked to people who, I talked to this lady who was from Sardinia, and like I was on some like weird like Reddit thread with some of her, and I was thinking about going to Sardinia, and I called her and stuff, and they'll say, like, if they do not tell people about their giant bones anymore, because like the British will come and get them and destroy them. Like they do not tell outsiders about, they don't show them, they don't, like, they were like something is wrong with your culture, like you're destroying the evidence of this stuff. We don't get why, but it's been pervasive with you since you know, since we can remember. So it's really kind of a bizarre thing to me. So it's a lot about, really, there's just so many corroborating stories of the cover up and stuff. And then also, like, Hugh Newman and Jim Vieira were telling me about how sometimes, like, they weren't like preserved like mummies where you know, like the bones are okay. Like sometimes these bones, if they're not in the right conditions, when you do discover them, they disintegrate like right afterwards. They literally can't really survive long after they've been unburied. But there's like the mounds in America, like the amount that were destroyed is just insane if you really look into the mounds. But so many of them are told to have 7-8 foot tall people, like on, like in a proportionality that's not normal. Like it's not like, you know, like, yeah, we have some 7 foot 8 foot basketball player kind of type people that exist today, but like how, like 1 in every million people is born that's 7 foot tall. Or I mean, I don't even know what the real statistic is, but it's probably even less than that, right?
It's either 3,000 in America or 3,000 in the world or something. It's very small. Yeah.
Yeah. And like you're talking about, like, you know, every mound would have at least 1 person over 7 feet. Like they said, even I went to Palenque, and what's his name? I can't remember the main tomb there. Supposedly he was over 7 feet tall. Like they're if you look at, like, there's the elongated skulls in Colombia, which are crazy, like that I saw, that are, they're not even elongated, they're just a different shape of head, different, like all over Peru, the Peruvian elongated skulls is a whole rabbit hole that you could look into. That's just crazy.
Because, you know, honestly, I've almost been afraid to go down that rabbit hole because it seems so interesting. But like it seems so big that it's almost like a little daunting. Like looking at these skulls and stuff, like you really have to, like, okay, I'm really gonna have to research this, because personally I've just giants I can kind of wrap my head around. Again, you see 7 foot tall people, you know, so it seems like, oh, a cool thing. And then they have these kind of, you know, there's these interesting phenotypes around the world, so you're like, interesting. But yeah, the whole elongated skull thing is a different level. And then you're also thinking about the binding of other cultures too. It seems very interesting.
But the binding is like, there's infants that they have infant, and they even have a fetal one that wasn't actually born that has got an elongated skull. Like this wasn't, especially the Peruvian elongated skulls, you have to look into. Like I can look at Brian Forrester has done a lot of work on that. I've had a couple interviews with him as well. Like I would suggest starting there, and then you can continue going forward. It's So what is the biggest evidence for giants existing besides the fact they've been covering up? I feel like so much of our history is cultivated and curated for us and be like, and then this happened and this happened, this, and they want to talk about how we got from an amoeba to this in a very structured little, and I just don't, it's so contrived, and it's so like, this is the sanction. Nope, don't look over there. This is what you can look in. Only this. And then that you start getting, it's claustrophobic. It's really weird. And I was recently in a Twitter war like a couple days ago because Graham Hancock is having this new Netflix thing coming out like in November, and some anthropologists and some archaeologists like in the academic world are saying like, don't watch it because he's a racist. And it's like, he's a racist because why? Oh, he's a racist because he's saying that we don't know who built some of these old structures, like these megalithic structures.
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying that like mainly they probably would have been built by brown skinned people, and you're saying that like white people would have come in and built them, or aliens or something. It was like, nobody ever said that. That's not like, who cares if they're brown, white, or blue? Like, I don't give a crap. Like that, it's not about the race in which built it. What it's about is that there exist on this planet so many buildings that we couldn't rebuild today. Like if you like go to Sacsayhuaman, let's take Peru. Like look at this. I mean, like look at Baalbek, look at Lebanon, look at the amount of how big some of these base blocks are. Even if you could like move them with 26 cranes today, you lift it up, you couldn't move it. Something, we don't have vehicles big enough to carry that. So how are they supposed to do this with horses and carts? Like I'm working on a database right now to showcase all these like weird anomalies, and there's hallmarks. Just like today, it doesn't matter if something was built in Japan or Greece or Egypt or America. Okay, like they're gonna have screws, they're gonna have nails, they're gonna have maybe 2x4s, and then they're gonna use some base materials that are the same. Well, there was a culture that's all over the world, and there's monuments found all over the world. They have their little nuances, right? They have their little design elements that are different, just like it's different. Like buildings in Japan might look different than buildings in Texas, okay? But at the same time, they're still going to have these core base elements of how we build things now. Like that, our globalization has got to that point. Their globalization was at that point in the past time and it's really hard because I think the dates you have to throw out because they've really, really messed up with this. Anyway, because you can't date stone. Like no matter what they tell you, you cannot date stone. So there are things like nubs. Nubs are they're these weird protrusions that are on these stones everywhere. There's pinch holes, there's these beveled blocks, there's precise mortarless constructions, there's megalithic blocks, meaning like, and I'm defining that as something that like, you couldn't move with a horse in the pulley system, like big giant rocks that are not like, they're not easy to move. They wouldn't even be easy to move today. And yet they obviously built them with some sort of ease. And that's another thing that kind of like makes me go into, were they giants? Like, did they have an exponential more strength than we currently had? I don't know. But some of these things are, even if you were a giant, like unless you're like 100 feet tall, you're not going to be moving Baalbek Lebanon stones that are, like just, or like Yingshan quarry in China. Like there's this existence is, you have to intentionally be ignoring it to know that it's not there. And so that's where I think like academia is in some sort of echo chamber of, you want to talk about racist, like they're the people who are going off of, some imperial, like, people from 1800s who went, so anyway, there's more to the human story than the sanctioned powers that be are allowing us to know about. And if you really want to get into it, you have to do your own research and do it, because it's not going to be told to you. You're not going to get it at your indoctrination camp, which is what they call school these days. You're not going to get it on, like PBS or some sort of TV channel. You're probably not even going to get it on Gaia. You're going to have to get it, like, you're going to have to do some deep dive digging. And yeah, so that is like definitely, like, that's kind of the kind of people I talk to on my channel for the most part, people who are doing deep dive digging into our ancient past and like what really went on here.
Yeah. Fascinating. I think, yeah, there's so much that seems lost or hidden. And again, we really don't know. I mean, 15 years ago, some things could be distorted, some fact could be, slightly distorted, or also just the fact that, okay, even if it was recorded correctly and written down correctly, how do we not know then, we didn't play some sort of telephone? And then there's all the stories of like the Library of Alexandria, or all these other stories of all these big major libraries that were destroyed, unfortunately, in the past, burned down. And you have to wonder, what did we know in the past? And all these ancient cultures, it does seem to lend you to some sort of seafaring civilization, especially when you realize the likelihood of certain animals on certain continents that technically shouldn't be there. They'll, you could claim convergent evolution, or you could
There's
claim
camels were all over like South America and North America. And if you want to take like in our fossil record, like even supposedly like right before the Younger Dryas, like 10,000 years ago, like in Waco, Texas, there's all these like there's like a nursery herd of 16 woolly mammoths that died with like their 8 juveniles in their tusks. So like obviously there was some sort of flash freeze or some sort of event that like boom and buried them all at one time, like in a nursery herd circle. Anyway, my thing with that is like there was also 20-foot sloths. Okay, like you're talking about there, and this isn't even that long ago. We're talking about as soon as maybe 10,000 years ago. Okay, cool. Well, maybe, and like just stay on this thought thread with me, because I don't think it's that crazy to think that there is fossil evidence, there is skeletal evidence of, humans that were bigger, like I'm telling you, the pervasiveness of these 7-foot things. There are those dwarf ones that they found, like I can't remember what the name is off the top of my head, but Denisovans, like there's other kinds of human cousins that were in existence that maybe not now. Well, okay, like what if we really had other technology that is akin to what electricity is to us today, but it worked differently? Who knows how how it worked? We don't know, because we don't have evidence of it. And something within the earth changed. Like you couldn't have a 20-foot sloth in existence today, because it would collapse on its own gravity. The conditions of the planet are different than they were even 10,000 years ago. And that's something we're not talking about. And the dinosaurs couldn't exist today. Like the dinosaurs wouldn't be a bronchosaurus, if that is like how they actually look, like that wouldn't be able to lift its head up. Like a blue whale out of the water would collapse on its own. Like we don't have our conditions that we're existing in, or whatever we're calling gravity, which sometimes I think gravity is just a lazy word for a force that we don't really understand. But anyway, like I think that like we don't understand the forces within, we don't even understand the own mechanism of the thing that we're on, right? I mean, you're talking about a planet that's 25,000 miles in diameter, and we've dug 14 miles down into it. And then you're telling me, what's at the center of the core? We don't know. We don't know if we have plate tectonics or if we're expanding or contracting Earth. We don't really understand the mechanism, how the organism that we live on works. And so to me, I don't think it's that weird to be like, oh, there's all these amazingly put together and stone structures all over the world that we're saying were built by, primitive people who, whatever, like had horse and buggy and, like, yay, they had bronze tools. When bronze on a Mohs hard scale, MOHS, Mohs hard scale, that's how you see how hard a rock is or not. It goes like 0, or like it's like your, like the hardness of your fingernail. I think that's like a 3 or something, all the way to like a diamond being the hardest, right? Which is a 10. So a 0 to 10 scale. Bronze is a 3. Okay. And then you're telling me granite is like a 7 or an 8. You're telling me they use their little bronze, like, all this, the Iron
Yeah, it
Age,
chisels
Bronze Age,
away. Yeah.
chiseled away. So, like, it doesn't even math. It like scientifically, it wouldn't even work. And that's just like a very basic, like 101 level thing to tell somebody, and they're just like, well, no, that's what they say. That's what they say. So that's how it happened. You're like, oh my God. It's really, I think it is an example of when you really start digging into the alternative history community. It's an example of how deeply things are indoctrinated in us.
Yeah, we take so much at just without
Face value.
yeah, face value, literally. I think that was such a good point that I've actually never really pondered or heard about the just mathematical improbability of having certain things at 20 feet, these sizes, these proportions literally couldn't have existed with our modern gravity, as you said, with our modern planet. So clearly, either in some sort of cataclysm or either some sort of pole shift, some sort of, warming
Something.
or colding. You mentioned earlier that must have been some flash freezing. Clearly, there had to have been some major shifts on the planet, because how could any of these things occur? And then also you hear all the stories of giants, even in the Bible, the biblical text. In all cultures, they usually have reference to some sort of giants and some sort of normal sized people. Even the Titans were giants, I believed, and then the gods were, I believe, normal size. I could have got that wrong, but
Have like every culture has some sort of like ancient giant sort of situation. So you're going like, okay.
Yeah, so it's not a surprise at all to me that any of these things then could be more real, and it's not it's not fully taught to us, and especially when you look at some of the old maps, I find very interesting. When you look at some of the old maps and things are labeled certain things or things are not there, there's the conspiracy theories about Tartaria, which I find very interesting. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, totally. I've looked into Tartaria. The problem with Tartaria is it's like they just like threw a dart and we're like, let's just go into that. Let's just go into the Tart. Like there's so many like go like do like that Jay Leno thing where you go on the street and you ask like 10 people, name me 10 past cultures. Like I don't think 3 people could name me 10 past cultures. So who cares about Tartaria? Like that's an arbitrary name for a place. I mean, I just feel like, I mean, my Russian friends, they know, they were taught about Tartaria. They like know that Tartaria existed, things that don't add up about timeline. I mean, but rather than getting like abstract about it, I think where you can actually get empirical physical evidence is when you go to, like, stones do not lie. Like they'll tell you, oh, Sacsayhuaman in Peru or like Machu Picchu or something like that. Oh, it's like it was built by the Incas 1,000 years ago. And then they'll tell you like, oh, the pyramids are, whatever, like 5,000 years old. And then they'll tell you Göbekli Tepe is like 10,000 years old or 11,000 years old or something. And Kirin Tepe is like 12,000. Blah 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 blah. In the end of the day, the way in which we measure or how we date things is the strata layers, which is a whole flawed system of bullshitness. And when you start really looking into it, then you have like your carbon, your C14 dating, which is also like can only work if it's like if there's a hearth, if there's some wood there, if there was organic. So you're telling me, okay, so somebody could have just gone by and had a fire like 5,000 years after it was made, and then that's when you date it.
And that's how you ascribe certain dates. Yeah.
I mean, they'll be like, oh, well, there's uranium. There's all these other like kind of like bullshit ways in which they cannot date stone.
They're really guessing, and they don't want to.
They're guessing. And the other thing is like, even if you were like, oh, this granite was made like in the crucibles of the earth like 56 million years ago, actually, this is when this granite was made. You don't know when it was manipulated and put into that structure. So we're working with a flawed system of not even really, like, we're guesstimating half the stuff. And or you're going off of dates that some guy in 1836 decided, oh, I'm deeming that this date, and so that was probably like the hardest thing for me to shake is the dating of stuff, and like feeling like it was really important to know the timeline of this begot this, which begot this, which begot this, and which really, when you don't listen anybody else's interpretation of anything. Like, try to clear your mind of anybody else's, how they view or see or whatever. If you just take it on first principles alone, if you were the first person to walk around this ruin, what could you deduce from it? Then start comparing all the ruins together, and you can start seeing that they have hallmarks that are the same. Like the things I said before, that hallmarks, meaning there are signatures of building techniques. Just like we have the screws and the nails and we use steel today in our buildings. They had the same sort of situations. Like they have these nubs and pinch holes and beveled blocking. They have like mortarless giant, they're building with stone. The kind of, like, we have to start looking at the proximity to the quarries that they would have built at. All these things, like, to me, start adding up to, this was a civilization that was connected before they're telling us they were connected. They were globalized before, where they were seafaring, they were whatever, I don't know. There's so many other things that think, like, if you look into Vermanas, you look into what is that place in Sri Lanka? It's like Surigati, where it looks like you can only access to if you had some kind of flying machine, maybe. You have their Nazca lines in Peru. I don't know if they knew how to fly at one point or not. You know, I definitely have had the experience, like my most recent experiences with this was like I was in some severe turbulence, and people were screaming and this and that, and like I was buckled into my harness in the back, because I'm a flight attendant, and I was like I got through back, and I had this, like, I breathed in through the fear, released the fear, and then, because I was just like, okay, well, I guess this is a cooler way to die than cancer or something. Like, okay, let's just like I was accepting the moment. And then I was becoming the calm inside the storm of like this, and I was back with there's how to explain it, but like, you know, other cultures, other things have said this, but like I felt it. Okay. So like I was the viewer. There's something that views, there's something I was the observer. There is something that looks through all of our eyes. And I think what looks through your eyes and my eyes and everybody's eyes, it's not good nor bad. It's just non-judgment. I think that's like the ultimate like source energy. And I think that is like, that's the base concept, base consciousness. And I think that is like the oneness of everything is that. Okay. But then on top of that, there is like, it's like the monad or whatever they call it, the one eye that looks through us all. But then I almost saw like the waves, the floating energy of what is consciousness and all these clouds and thought patterns. Your droplet of water within the ocean that you're somehow connected through, that you're the eyeballs that the consciousness is looking through at that moment, is somehow, for whatever reason, your energy signature sticks with you, and you can't leave that, because that is your soul, or that is your thing, right? But you can choose which cloud to go on in this and that. You just don't have to identify with your thoughts. You don't have to identify with the consciousness that is moving through you at any given time and seeing it. So it's weird. It's like the one eye is like all your stored collective data in your hard drive. That's even your external hard drive that can be accessed at any time. But then you have what's on your desktop, and then you have like what you're actually looking at in your email or whatever. You know, it's like, it just depends on the level of focus that you want to go into within reality and your consciousness and all that stuff. Anyway, I don't know, that's kind of probably doesn't make sense to most people, but I that's all to say that, you know, I kind of feel like ultimately you have more choice on how you want to experience this reality than you really think you do. But if anything wants to really bring you back to reality, go look into the rocks, and like that's the empirical evidence of how, like, nobody can tell you how they even formed. Like nobody can tell you there are epochs that have happened and have come and have gone, and we don't know the names of any of the people who existed then. And that's grounding to me.